Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lithium Chile's live corporate webinar. This is Will Mays from RB Milestone. Lithium Chile has ownership in the largest high-grade lithium reserves in the world, located in Chile and Argentina, with a management team with proven leadership in the lithium space, as well as an experienced Chilean and Argentinian-based technical team. The shares are traded on the TSXV under the symbol LITH and on the OTCQB under the symbol LTMCF. Joining us today is the company's president and CEO, Steve Cochrane, who will be going through Lithium Chile's investor presentation. This will include a brief overview of the company's strategy and current operations, as well as upcoming operational timeline and investment milestones. At the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions for management to address. If you're interested in asking a question, and you're logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your questions directly to us in the Q&A module. Please note that this presentation is being recorded today, Thursday, September 22nd, 2022, and will soon be made available on the company's website at www.lithiumchile.ca. That's lithiumchile.ca. Today's call may contain forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results, performance, or developments to differ materially from those contained in the statements and are not guarantees of future performance of the company. No assurance can be given that any of these events anticipated by the forward-looking statements will occur, and if they do occur, what benefits the company will obtain from them. Also, some risks and uncertainties may be out of the control of the company. Lithium Chile has a full disclaimer contained on their presentation. Lastly, RBMG is not a registered investment advisor or a broker-dealer. For more information, please visit rbmilestone.com. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve Cochrane, President and Chief Executive Officer of Lithium Chile. Steve, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Will. And let's start by first thanking everybody for taking the time today and listening to what I think is one of the great stories in the lithium space today. And after I finish, I hope you feel the same way. But it's a very serious story, and there's a lot of moving parts. So I better get started right away because we have a lot of ground to cover. First and foremost, we are a lithium brine company, and we're located primarily in Argentina and Chile in South America. What's important about that is that the highest grade, lowest cost lithium carbonate in the world comes out of those two countries. Over 70% of the known lithium reserves in the world today reside in the so-called lithium triangle: Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. Bolivia has a bit of a challenge because of their political situation. So the bulk of the production of lithium carbonate out of South America today comes from those two countries, Argentina and Chile. We're one of the few, if only juniors, that have projects in both countries. To actually get exposure to Argentina and Chile, you normally have to look at the big companies like SQM, Albemarle, Livent. So we're one of the unique companies that have projects in both countries. So that not only sort of diversifies us geologically, but geopolitically as well. Fortunately, both countries currently very stable governments, very strong economies, and we're proud to be working in both. In Chile, we have a total of 84,000 hectares, over 12 properties. These are exploration projects. They're all high potential for lithium carbonate, but they're all exploration stage projects at this point in time. The big takeaway here, though, is that those 84,478 hectares were acquired strictly through staking. So our average acquisition cost of those 12 properties is $3 US per hectare. And currently in Chile today, people are looking at acquiring exploration projects anywhere from 800 to 2,000 US per hectare. So the fact we have such a low cost through staking really gives us a significant advantage in dealing with potential partners, potential suitors today. One of the game changers, one of the transformational events, though, for the company took place in April last year when we entered into a joint venture on 23,300 hectares in Salta province, Argentina. The provinces in Argentina control the resources, much like in the US and Canada. And Salta province is one of the most pro-mining, policy-wise, support-wise provinces in all of Argentina. So if you're going to be looking for lithium, Salta is a province you want to be. What made this deal truly transformational is that prior to February of this year, 2022, we were an exploration company. We had great projects, we had great potential, but we had the inherent risk that you have when you're an exploration company. That all changed as we drilled production test well on our Arizaro project in Argentina and made a significant discovery of a lithium carbonate deposit. We had an independent engineering firm, Montgomery Associates, out of Austin, Texas. They've been working in South America for 25 years, and they provided our independent engineering report that gave us an initial resource on our first well, one well, of 1,420,000 metric tons of lithium carbonate equivalent. That was a game changer for us because now we can say in all certainty that we have a resource. Our game plan now and what we're currently executing on is to prove that that project on the Salar de Arizaro, Argentina, is much bigger than 1.4 million metric tons. We've got a great management team, as Will mentioned. I'm very proud of them. I'm very proud of our people on the ground in Argentina and Chile. And as a result, and the resource opportunity we have been able to attract a significant strategic player, and that's resulted in us having one of the strongest balance sheets, one of the strongest cash positions of any junior company in our space. That partner, that strategic investor, is the Chengqing Lithium Group. They're based out of Shenzhen, China. They're the second largest, next to Ganfeng. They're the second largest lithium processor in China. They're publicly traded. I like to say they're a private public company, and they're currently have a market cap of over 9 billion Canadian. With 70,000 metric tons of current lithium capacity and building out another 60,000 metric tons of lithium carbonate capacity, their one major goal is securing feedstock, securing supply of lithium. So they approached me in January of this year. They had already made a $257 million investment into a production facility in Argentina, 50% of 1,500 metric tons a year of production in Salta province. So through the grapevine, they heard that we were doing some very interesting things on our Arizaro project. So they came to me, they said they want to get involved. My background is investment banking. I spent some time in China, and I was quite upfront. I said, I'd love to have you involved, but I know how methodical, how slow the majority of Chinese companies I work with are to make a decision. They said, no, we're different. So I offered them a $5 million private placement I announced in January at 70 cents. They came back within 36 hours, said they'd take it all. Unfortunately, $2 million had been spoken for. I managed to get them $3 million. They did that at 70 cents, and 24 hours after agreeing, the funds were in our lawyer's office. So great. I mean, I've never seen a company from China move that quickly. They're a great partner because they're not only strong financially, but as one of the largest, second largest lithium processor in all of China, they bring a tremendous amount of expertise to the table as well. They have expertise in production. They have expertise in processing. They have a DLE, direct lithium extraction facility in China. So they've not only brought strength and capital to the company, their advice and their support to date has been second to none. Last takeaway, BYD, which recently surpassed Tesla as the largest electric vehicle manufacturer in the world, based in China. Warren Buffett now has 8.5% stake in BYD. BYD bought a 5% stake in Chengxing, announced in February for 500 million Canadian. One of the reasons BYD invested in Chengxing is Chengxing had invested in us. BYD has been talking to us over the last year and a half about our projects in Chile. They know us, they like our projects, so it was kind of an investment for them that made a lot of sense. We're the mine, Chengxing's the processor, BYD is now the end user. Quickly, this is the so-called lithium triangle. For those people that may not be online, we actually are looking at a map of Chile, which runs along the coast, the western coast of South America from north to south. To the northeast, you have Bolivia. To the southeast, you have Argentina. This is where all of the lithium brines in South America are located. As you can see from this map, we do have the 12 projects running the whole length of the so-called lithium triangle in Chile, and then the breadth. We have a very large project in Argentina on the Salar de Arizaro. So we're very well positioned, both from an exploration standpoint, but obviously with the recent announcement of our initial resource from a development standpoint as well. And this is a little bit of why lithium. I mean, it's been in the news almost daily for the last 8 or 9 months, both from an EV and the Tesla growth side, but also from the commodity itself. A lot of people don't realize it's been the strongest performing commodity in the first 9 months of this year, but certainly for the last 2 years as well. It started the fall of 2020, as you'll see in the next chart, at about 5,000 US. Today it's trading at 72,000 US. And the reason is not only demand, driven by consumers wanting to make a change, but for the first time ever, we have governments around the world are mandating change. One of the easiest ways to reduce your carbon footprint is to remove the internal combustion engine from highways. And climate change now is probably the #1 policy facing governments around the world. And as a result, they're looking at any which way they can to reduce that carbon output. And obviously EVs are a big part of that future. So we actually have certain limits now imposed by various governments on the number of new vehicles that have to be electric vehicles. And that's going to be good. It is good for our industry now, but it's going to be good going forward. The second thing that's happened, people ask, is this Ukrainian war has taught the world 2 things. One is that gasoline can go to $7 a gallon, and that alternatives might be in order, but also having to wean themselves off of the dependence on Russian oil is going to drive Europe, I think, more and more to that electric vehicle side. So it's resulted in this next chart. The price of lithium has gone parabolic from the previous peak in the last bull market in lithium in 2018, 2019. 25,000 US was the highest it got to a low, as I say, in the fall of 2020 of between 4,500 to 5,000 US per metric ton. Lithium carbonate is now trading at 72,000 plus US per metric ton. So what's happened, and actually there was an article this week that in China, which is responsible for over 80% of the global battery manufacturing, is that lithium hit an all-time high. So this has been a market pullback. This has been a sector pullback. It hasn't been a commodity pullback, and that's an important takeaway. Demand forecast to continue for the foreseeable future. Again, bullish for our sector. And it's resulted in another very interesting event, and that's been the acquisition of basically our contemporaries. There's been huge M&A activity in the lithium space, most of it in Argentina, all of it in South America. But what's interesting is all the companies that have been acquired were pre-production. None of them had producing lithium mines. All they had resources were in the ground. And that just shows you how hungry, particularly these Asian companies are to secure supply, that they're going in and they're paying top dollar for companies that have just developed a resource. We see us in that category. We do now have an initial resource. We do have an initial investment from one of the big players in the Chinese lithium space. My job over the next 6 to 9 months is to prove that the initial resource is much bigger than 1.4 million metric tons. And I think that'll make us an attractive candidate for a future acquisition. Again, lots of information. I'll try and go through it. South America, low-cost producers of a ton of lithium carbonate in the world. It's 72,000 US per metric ton. It's not such an important statistics now, but it was when lithium was trading at 4,500. Quickly, difference between DLE and spodumene or hard rock lithium. Spodumene's only advantage is it's quicker to market. You can use a backhoe, front end loader, and dig out rock and crush it and ship it. It's very expensive though. It's very low grade. From an environmental standpoint, it's a far bigger environmental issue than the lithium brines that are currently produced in South America. They're produced in evaporation ponds. They're actually returning water to the environment, contrary to some of what people think that they're heavy water users. Smaller environmental footprint, higher quality overall. The one drawback is it takes about 18 to 24 months of evaporation before you get to a product that you can then manufacture. But there's something that's changing all that, and that's direct lithium extraction. There are over 80 companies around the world that are working on the technology to extract lithium right at the wellhead, reduce the ponds, reduce the time. And we have personal relationships. We have professional relationships with two of them. Summit Nanotech, which is a Calgary-based company, and also Lilac Solutions, which was in the news a year and a half ago because Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates both invested in Lilac for their direct lithium technology. So we've got both bases covered. We can do evaporation ponds, but we're working closely with two of the leaders right now in DLE that should help us. And this is our flagship project. This is the Salar de Arizaro in Argentina. It's the third largest salar in all of South America. It's the largest salar in Argentina. We are one of the largest landholders within the heart of the salar. And this is where we made our initial discovery in December of last year and announced it in February of this year. Really quickly, and for you who can't see this slide, it's basically a well log from our initial production well. We began drilling it in September of last year, completed it in December, and then we spent a month and a half testing it. And what we did, nobody else has done on this particular project, on this particular property, we drilled deeper than anybody had drilled before. Most companies only drilled the top 300 meters of this salar, and basically encountered nothing but rock salt, very low porosity, very low grade brines, and a very solid halite cap. Our geologists felt that cap came from a lower aquifer, so we drilled below the 300-meter cap to a total of 465 meters. And between 330 meters and 452 meters, we found a classic Argentinian lithium brine aquifer. One of the bigger discoveries that have been made in the last 10 years in Argentina, and really just reinforced the theory that our people had that this halite cap had been generated by a richer, lower, deeper lithium aquifer. And it's a game changer for us because it took us from an exploration company, as I mentioned, to now a company with an initial resource of 1.4 million. That resource comes from two things. One is, of course, your grade. The higher the grade, the higher the resource. We used an average grade on our engineering report that was fairly conservative at 298 milligrams per liter. But what set this well apart and what set this play apart was the flow rate. The volume of fluid that you can pump out of these wells is going to contribute not only to your resource, but obviously to your production capabilities. And we had an average of 22 liters per second that we could produce out of this first well. Put in perspective, the average flow rate, the average production rate in Salta province is 6 liters per second. So we are 4 times larger. It's a major discovery. And as I say, resulted in an initial resource of 1.4 million metric tons. That resource came from, it was assigned to 29% of the property. We still have 70% of the property that we're now currently exploring with both diamond drills and the production rig. We hope to be able to take that number from 1.4 million to 4, possibly 5 million metric tons of lithium carbonate. And we began the process of proving that up in June of this year. And last week we announced the results from the first step out well, which was 5 kilometers away from our original well. And we've encountered the same formation, a little deeper, about 20 meters deeper than we saw in the first hole, but we have the same aquifer. The field sampling we did of the brines we collected from that well show average grades around 340, 350. So we feel very confident that this, once the official lab results come in, the official engineering is going to come in, that second hole is going to add substantially to all of our resource. One of our peers that was bought out, Canadian company called Millennium Lithium, they were bought out for $500 million when they had proven up 4.1 million metric tons. But their first hole, the resource on their first hole they drilled was only 110,000 metric tons. So they had to drill 10 wells on their property to get the same number we did on our first well, and that's significant. This is the map of our current development project that's underway. We are drilling up to 7 wells. 4 of them will be very narrow diamond drill holes designed just to provide data on the formation. We're coring it. It'll provide porosity data. Obviously, we're taking samples. It'll provide sort of grade data, but just give us an idea of what the formation looks like, what our target looks like throughout the property. We also have 3 production wells planned. We are concurrently running an environmental impact study for 3 production wells, each capable of producing 5,000 metric tons a year of lithium carbonate. So we're working concurrently, not only to expand from an exploration standpoint the project, but running the necessary metallurgy and permitting that as this resource develops, we'll be able to move into a lithium producing capacity. We're budgeted at 4.9 million US. And as we talked about briefly, with the investment of Shenxing did a private placement with me that closed in May of this year at 95 cents. They invested $34 million for a 19.8% stake in Lithium Chile. That 34 million coupled with the 9 million we had in our bank account gives us a current bank balance of around $43 million. So our budget of 4.9 million US, 7.5 million Canadian, is more than covered for this current project. And as I mentioned, we're well underway. Here's a picture of the rotary rig. This rig is capable of drilling a 22-inch hole, diameter hole down to 800 meters. We're currently drilling with an 8-inch rotary bit designed to accommodate a 6-inch downhole pump. And we're into 380 meters of that first production hole as of last night. So that project's moving forward very nicely. And what we're doing is we're twinning that diamond drill hole. We're only about 35 meters away from where we drilled the first step out hole. And that hole, of course, returned 115 meters of pay. It was still open. We're still in the sands. We're still in the aquifer, but it returned 115 meters of pay, averaging about 340 milligrams per liter. So we're very excited about the potential for this production well. One of the things we drilled as well, which is important, we drilled a water well on the southern flank of the Salar de Arizaro. As you get out of the Salar properly, our geologists saw the potential for fresh water. So we drilled, applied, and received permit to drill a water well. We hit 100 meters of a freshwater aquifer. The well went artisanal, came up the drill pipe. We ran casing and capped it. We are now running flow rate tests on that well, how much it can produce, how much it can flow, how quickly that reservoir recharges. All that data we collect will then be used to apply for a water use permit from the provincial government. So we've taken a huge step forward in terms of proving the commerciality of this project by identifying a freshwater source. Whether you use direct lithium extraction or you use evaporation ponds, water is critical. And we're the first lithium company now to have identified a water source on this aquifer, on the salar. Concurrent, I mentioned to you, we're running metallurgy studies. As part of the commercialization process, you have to understand the chemistry of your brines to allow you to produce the highest grade lithium carbonate possible. We're doing that concurrently with the drill program. We have 3 chemical engineers on staff, 2 of which you see right now. These are test evaporation ponds. We want to see, how quickly the lithium will concentrate, but more importantly, what are the other impurities that we can precipitate out before we run processing on our brines. So running this concurrently again is just going to expedite the whole process for us to prove that this is a potential large commercial operation. Again, this is a camp on site. We have accommodations for 50 people. We have 2 drill rigs, 4 crews running. We have accommodation, kitchen, dining room, and a full healthcare medical facility on site. We're very concerned about the environment. One of the things that is most important is that you respect the environment. We have the support of the Aboriginal communities here. They love what we're doing, but they're particularly impressed with how we treat the environment and particularly waste handling. We've had 3 inspections so far this year, and we've passed in flying colors. And again, I think that's a huge credit to the people we have on the ground in Argentina. Briefly, because I've just talked about some of our projects in Argentina, we do have a number of very attractive projects ongoing in Chile. For you who follow politics in Chile, Chile recently, 2 weeks ago, rejected the proposal for a new, very left-leaning constitution. It was rejected resoundingly. 62% said no, versus 38% said yes, almost 2 to 1. Sent the right message that Chileans in particular like the status quo. And it's amazing how that uncertainty that was generated around that new constitutional vote has now dissipated. And we've been approached in the last 2 weeks by some major players that now see Chile again as an attractive place to invest. One of the projects that I like the most, and I'm just going to touch on it briefly because I know we're taking up a lot of your time here. It's the Salar de Coipasa. The Salar de Coipasa straddles the Bolivian border. It's the 2nd biggest salar in the world. 80% of the salar is on the Bolivian side. We control 65% of the basin on the Chilean side. 2 things make this attractive. One is we had our highest grade sample ever, 1,410 milligrams per liter of lithium. If you recall, your resource is a function of grade. That's some of the highest grade lithium ever sampled in Chile. But more importantly, in February of 2019, the Bolivian government announced a joint venture with the Chinese company called the Xinjiang TBA Group to jointly develop the Bolivian side of the same basin. And the Chinese company put up $1.4 billion US to earn a 49% interest in the Bolivian side. So they valued the Bolivian side of the salar at $3 billion US. We have 65% of the Chilean side, and we have an enterprise value of $65 million. So obviously they overvalued this, or we're genuinely undervalued. We've entered into 3 projects, 3 joint venture projects. My focus is right now Argentina, but I would like to advance our projects in Chile. So we've done 2 JVs with a company called Monumental Minerals on 2 of our lithium properties, 2 of the 12 lithium properties in Chile, Laguna Blanca and Turi. They're going to pay us a combination of cash, get an equity stake in their company, and they have 2 to 3 years of investment directly in the project itself, turn up to 75% interest. So it allows me to move projects forward in Chile while at the same time, concentrating my resources on developing the commerciality in Argentina. We have some legacy copper, gold, silver projects in the company, one of which I farmed out again to focus on lithium, but then to move some of these projects along on somebody else's dime. So Las Gavilas is a copper, cobalt, gold, silver project that we just recently joint ventured. Next 6 months will result in our completion of this 7-well program on Arizaro. 60 days after that, we anticipate an updated resource report. We're hoping that it's going to come in that 4 to 6 million metric ton range. Certainly based on that first well, the first step out well we announced last week, we're encouraged by what we see. Chile, we've been working on a drill program on Coy Pass. I mentioned it to you just now. We're currently working with the indigenous community there for a drill program and their support. So that's one of our priorities for the upcoming year in Chile as well. Quickly, a quick look at our market cap and our financial situation. In the last 6 months, mostly due to market conditions, we've come from a high of $1.21 down to a low of 50 cents. So our market cap was raised from 100 to $168 million. We are sitting on $43 million in cash. We also have $1.9 million in marketable securities from the joint ventures I've done. As mentioned, I've received equity that if we were to sell today would generate another 1.9 million bucks. So we're well capped. We have no debt, 196 million shares outstanding, of which 43% is owned by management, friends, and family, and another, call it 18%, is owned by the Chinese. So the company is very tightly held. We do trade very liquid. We have a large retail ownership, and we've seen good liquidity over the last year. It's only with this recent market downturn, things have slowed down. Quickly, the team. My background is investment banker for 36 years. I took this company public back in 2013. Joined them full-time as president in August of 2017, and have thoroughly enjoyed everything we've done to date and very proud of what we've done. Al, our chairman, has built and sold a number of oil and gas companies. So his expertise in structuring deals is invaluable as part of the team. Terry Walker, our chief geologist, he's got over 28 years now in Chile, probably knows more about opportunities that are available in Chile, and it was responsible for staking those 84,000 hectares and the $3 cost per hectare. Jose De Castro, they call him Mr. Lithium, in Salta province. He teaches lithium at the University of Salta. Started as a career chemical engineer with FMC 25 years ago, was one of the founders of OTCQB. OTCQB was sold last year to Galaxy for $3.4 billion US, and Jose was one of the founding employees with OTCQB. Michelle DeCecco, she's a MBA, master's in finance, but she's an expert in regulatory affairs. So she keeps us on side in terms of our reporting and our filing. So she's a great person to have on board. And there you have it. That's a really brief overview of what we currently have, and more importantly, what we have going on. We've got a great team, we've got great projects, and I see tremendous upside, not only in our sector, but in our company as well. So I'd like to turn it back to you, Will, and if anybody has any questions, I will endeavor to try and answer them.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks for a very thorough and insightful presentation. We'll now move to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and if you're interested in asking a question or logged in the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit questions to us directly in the Q&A module. We'll now take a moment to get a queue, but in the meantime, we have had a few questions come in beforehand. So Steve, I think we'll get going here. There's first question, seems to be a lot of research being carried out into alternative battery solutions. Do you see this as being a threat, or do you have any sort of insight into that?
You know, that question comes up a lot, and it's a good question. Most of the research, if not all the research, is in cathode anode technology, finding a better, positive charge and a negative discharge. What lithium is just the electrolyte. We are just the host that stores the electrical charge. How it comes in, how quickly it goes out, how quickly it charges. That's where a lot of the R&D is going on right now in graphite or silicone anodes. So we're kind of agnostic, right? Whatever the technology for the poles of the battery are is irrelevant to us, because all we do is host the electrons. And given that lithium is the third lightest material in the world, next to hydrogen and helium, obviously, and has the highest energy density storage per weight, we feel very comfortable that as far as hosting the electrons, right now, lithium is the only source. A lot of work going on in other sectors, but it's going to be heavier. You're going to add weight to whatever capacity you might be able to increase. And when you're talking about, tablets and mobile phones and electric vehicles, weight is your enemy. So as far as the R&D into anode cathode, yeah, it's great, but it really doesn't affect us.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Next question is, I know you touched on this in the presentation, but might be worth delving into a little bit more here. Is really centered around ESG. Chile's a great, beautiful country. What measures are in place to ensure minimum adverse effects on the environment?
That's a good question as well, and it's a bit of a catch-22, because right now the environment is the number one issue on every government, probably every investor's table today, and yet we're part of the solution. EVs, electric transportation, electric aircraft, non-polluting is part of the solution. So it's a bit of a saw-off. Yes, there's environmental impacts in whatever you do, right? But is the benefits outweigh it? One of the things, and we did touch on it, is from an environmental impact study, or just the environmental impact point, is that the hard rock spodumene is a much greater ecological environmental threat than the lithium brine development. It's going to get better as well, because as DLE technology proves itself up, where you can just put a modular unit, at the wellhead, extract the lithium, return the other elements into the ground, that's going to leave a very, very small environmental footprint. And when we meet with these Aboriginal communities and we tell them that we've got joint ventures with two of what we feel are the leaders in that direct lithium extraction, it resonates with them. When you can argue, lower water usage, lower environmental footprint, lower carbon emissions, lower energy use, they see that as a win-win. You're producing a resource that's going to reduce, the carbon footprint, and you're reducing your own carbon footprint at the same time. So it's the future, but it's going to benefit us.
Great, thanks. And I know it's a little early stage, but we had this question come up really about the sales channel and Salesforce. A little bit early for that, but maybe you could just talk about what you're seeing on the downstream, on the demand side.
Well, it's huge. And, my goal right now is to prove that we're a commercial resource company. We're not there yet. We're not producing any lithium. We are moving down that road that we will go into production, but we don't have a product yet. So the sales side is not a big part of our short-term goals. Having said that, I get 1 to 2 emails every week from end users from around the globe that say they're interested in lithium carbonate. Would we be able to send them a sample? Would we be able to provide them, 10,000 tons a year, 15,000 tons a year? And I'm very polite and apologetic, saying we're not there yet, but that will certainly, keep you in mind. So there's such a shortage right now, and such a forecast shortage, that these end users are reaching out to us, and we're very early stage. So I think the sales will solve themselves when it comes to that. But again, what's happening is the big companies, the Ganfangs, the Chenxings, the the Jinjin mining companies of the world are buying up these resources while they're still on the ground. So there's a distinct possibility we'll never need to get to production, because as we prove up this resource, I know we're going to be attractive to one of the bigger players in the space.
Interesting. Thanks, Steve. Another question coming here. You know, you've got these great projects, a great talented team around you to move these projects forward. And so maybe you could just tell us what's on your very near term, what's on the plate, very near term, what you're focused on.
Well, we touched on that. I'm really focused on proving this 1.5 million ton resource is more like a 4 to 5 million ton resource. And we're well underway. We've got the first a diamond drill hole completed. Will probably be the first, and these are step out. These are development wells. We still have our initial production well we announced. We're using that well to run the produced brine. We've got a pump in there. We've produced 2,000 liters of brine for our own testing, as well as we've shipped some to Chengxing. So my near-term goal is doing just what we're doing, proving up that this is a much larger asset than we've reported, and that the market is giving us credit for, and we're well underway. So that's going to be a goal that we'll reach late this year, early in the first quarter next year. And with that, I'll be able to, it's my goal to be able to update that resource, the initial resource report sometime late in the first quarter of 2023. In the meantime, I'm entertaining almost weekly offers. People are interested, people need lithium. They look at our asset base and are very keen to do joint ventures with us. So that's also a project that we're working diligently on as well. So, you know, we're proud to say that we're really a resource company that's increasing its near-term goals are to increase that resource exponentially. We've got the people, we've got, more importantly, we've got the equipment and the manpower to do so, because both are challenging right now in Argentina. There's so much activity in Argentina going on that if you were to go there today and want to drill a lithium well, even an exploration well, the waiting period for a rig is between 12 and 18 months. So we're well positioned. We've got the people, the equipment in place to execute on our near-term business plan.
Great. And I know you've touched on this subject several times during the presentation, but the question came in. I think it might be worth reiterating. Maybe you could comment on your neighbors, other folks in Latin America, the majors and whatnot, the M&A activity and what's been going on there.
Well, the great news for us is that universe of competitors, that universe of peers has shrunk significantly. Over the last year and a half, two of our neighbors, and one peer that was in Catamarca province, which is the province south of us, have all been acquired. And so anybody that was close in size to us, probably 2 to 3 times bigger than where we are currently today, have all been bought out. So the universe of opportunities, the universe of potential acquisition is shrinking almost monthly. Just last month, there was another company, a company called Lithica, that had a property on the Salar de Pozuelos, which is about 65 kilometers away from the Salar de Arizaro. They just got bought out by Ganfeng for $962 million US. What's interesting about that company is that it was a Canadian company that was sold to an Argentinian company for $100 million in 2019, when they had 700,000 metric tons of lithium carbonate resource. They drilled that up to now they have 3.5 million metric tons over the last 2 years of lithium carbonate resource, and they were bought for close to $1 billion. So that was a tenfold return over a 2-year period. So just reinforces how hungry. And we haven't even seen the American companies get involved. There's been a lot of rhetoric, at the congressional level and at the government level, saying that these are strategic materials. We need to start looking at, developing lithium resources or acquiring lithium resources. And yet we haven't seen a lot of M&A activity out of the American companies. But I think that's going to come as well. Again, we're just in a really good place right now from an industry standpoint.
All right, thanks. Great. Well, we're pressing up against time here, so time for one last question. Basically, Lithium Chile stock. Why now? Why Lithium Chile? Maybe you can just close with a few milestones that investors should be looking for.
I tell people when they're looking at investment, you're really looking at three risks. One is obviously capital risk. Is the company finance? Can they finance? Two is obviously exploration risk. Do they have anything? Will they have anything? And of course, the third is market risk. I've addressed the first two. We don't have capital risk. We have, if you look at our G&A, we have 30 years of if we're not drilling and exploring, we have 30 years worth of G&A in the bank. I've reduced the exploration risk. We did announce our initial resource, 1.4 million metric tons. So we're now a resource company. We just don't know how big. What I can address is market risk. And let's face it, we're in the throes of a bear market after, one of the best bull markets in history. It's like, day follows night. That's to be expected. We're going to have a correction. But if you look back historically, and as you remember, I've been in the investment side for 36 years, the very best time to buy stocks is in a bear market, because that's when you get the best value. Most people jump in at the top and sell at the bottom. We've been affected by this sentiment, this negative sentiment. And yet from a corporate standpoint, we've never been stronger. So if you're looking at an entry point, buy in a downturn and benefit when markets come back, because they will. The big question is when, right?
Right. Well, fantastic. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today for the presentation. Today's webinar recording will soon be made available on Lithium Chile's website. And if you have any additional questions that have not been addressed on this webinar, please feel free to email us at lithiumchile@rbmilestone.com. Again, that's lithiumchile@rbmilestone.com. Thanks again, everybody. And thanks. This concludes our webinar.
Thanks, Will. It was a pleasure.